Paulo Pezzolano has been sacked as Watford manager after just 10 games in charge. The Uruguayan was appointed in May following the departure of Tom Cleverley. He came in with the reputation of being a promotion specialist, having done it in the second tiers of Uruguay, Brazil and Spain. And while Watford do find themselves 11th with 3 wins, 3 draws and 3 losses, supporters have been left far from convinced that he's the man to take them forwards. TalkSport say Pezzolano has fallen out with the majority of Watford players who were confused by constant changes to personnel and system. Just in terms of games managed, he's actually the shortest serving Watford manager since Billy McKinley's 2 games in charge in 2014. So, yeah, this is short even by Watford standards.
You say that, but I am somewhat surprised. Mainly because surely there's someone along the same lines or shorter than Pezzolano here. But I think we can criticise Watford until we're blue in the face for their approach. But actually, I strangely think they deserve some credit here.
Okay.
The reason why I say that is because they recognise they made a mistake and they've rectified it very, very quickly before the season's got away from them. It does make them look silly because they appointed this man in the summer with the hope that he will lead them into the Premier League on a 1-year contract, worth bearing in mind. But it was clear that he just wasn't the right personality for the squad they recruited. So I think there's some credit that should come Watford's way here.
Okay. That's a take. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree, but we'll talk more about that shortly, because Pezzolano always seemed like an odd appointment to me. It's something I've never really been swayed on. Yes, he might be a promotion specialist, but getting promoted from the second tiers of Uruguay, Brazil and Spain is completely different to the Championship. As far as second tiers go, the Championship is by far the strongest in the world. And yes, I do include Spain in that. The only time Pezzolano has ever managed at a high level is in La Liga, where he got battered every week. In fact, he hadn't even managed in Europe until 2 years ago. So it always seems like a bit of a leap to me to say this guy was the man who could get Watford promoted. And even then, I always thought he was up against it anyway, because Watford's owners made it very clear when they sacked Tom Cleverley that they were expecting his successor to have them competing for the playoffs. In my eyes, Watford's squad is not up to that level, and that's down to underinvestment over several years and some very scattergun recruitment over the years. Having said that, Pezzolano certainly didn't help himself by leaving out certain players, Quadro Bar being the most obvious example of that. So I was always going to be surprised if Pezzolano did last for long. I said that at the start of the season, actually, and Watford clearly weren't totally convinced when they only gave him a 12-month contract.
Well, this is it. It's a 12-month contract for me. That's the big giveaway. It's it feels like they're saying we're taking a risk on you. It seems worth it based on your CV and the essence of you potentially bringing an attacking style of play. Because reading up about him after he's appointed, he likes a press. He likes to be attacking. He wants to get at opposition, and we haven't really seen any of that so far. So I think when you've had a pre-season, and I know they recruited extensively over the summer, and things do take time to bed in, but with Watford, there's no time. It's a strange club because, no disrespect to them. The reason why I say it's strange is because they're not a big city club where they should be competing in the top 10 of the Premier League by club size alone. So for the expectation to be there from the owners is a strange one. They need to build periodically, like we've seen clubs of a similar size, like Brentford, Brightons have done in previous years, but the owners just don't seem to want to go that way at all. So yeah, this was always a risky appointment, and I wouldn't say it's blown up in the face because, like I said, I think they've made a change before it can blow up in the face, and I think that's why some credit should go their way. That being said, you can criticise him for making the wrong appointment. They made the wrong appointment. He's the wrong personality, didn't fit, and this is where they're at now. Another managerial change.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you say there. And to kind of follow on from what you were saying about them, making change after change, I think the frustrating thing is, from my perspective, Watford went out of their way to sack Tom Cleverley and get this guy in. Tom Cleverley did a marvellous job. He had Watford competing a lot higher than anyone expected last season, but they got rid of him. And that meant Watford were back in this cycle, which they've been stuck in for many years, of sacking managers willy-nilly. Now, I'm not saying Pezzolano was the manager they should have stuck with, far from it. But with Cleverley, they at least had someone who was popular with the fans, with the players. Yes, results dropped off in the second half of the season, but that seemed to coincide with reports that he was going to be sacked midway through the season. So they should have definitely stuck with him, because otherwise I fear Watford are just going to be stuck in this cycle, and unless they break it, they're just going to keep regressing as a club. And we'll get onto Pezzolano's replacement shortly, but I've got to say, if you're ever in a position where someone asks you to name every Watford manager from the past 10 years, Paulo Pezzolano is undoubtedly the most obscure one in there, which is saying something, isn't it, considering the number of managers they've had in that time.
Is it Sanino?
Yep, he's one.
He's obscure. Vladimir Ivic is obscure. I think the rest can be named, but those two...
I mean, Pezzolano's managed fewer games than them, so that goes to show how obscure he is. But it might be one of those things, Justin, where you have the question in your mind, and because he's so obscure, he's one of the first ones that comes to your head. Do you know what I mean? Like, whenever I have a quiz to name every Premier League team ever, the first ones I always go to are Swindon, Oldham, Barnsley, Bradford. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The smaller clubs haven't been there for a while. I think with Pezzolano, it's got recency bias if you're throwing out a quiz, but it is almost laughable that this is where we're at with the approach, that it becomes an expectation, because the optimism I saw from Watford fans in the summer was more than I've seen in a very, very long time. And that was with the sacking of Tom Cleverley, who was a fan favourite. And I think we can agree to disagree on whether or not he should have been sacked. I think with that...
Do you think he should?
His form in the second half of the season, I think you raise questions, don't you? It was relegation form. Whether or not he deserves to is another debate that's completely pointless and fruitless, because he's not there anymore. But ultimately, they've put themselves in a situation where change is normal, but change isn't sustainable. And this is what Pezzolano was saying just a couple of weeks ago, where they have to become a normal club in a sense. And they're far from a normal club. So in that essence of things, you need a far from normal manager. And Pezzolano, I don't think, as I say, personality-wise, was ever going to fit the bill.
Yeah, well, Watford have moved quickly to replace Pezzolano, and it's a familiar face because Javi Gracia has signed a 2-year deal to return 6 years after his last spell at Vicarage Road.
God.
He's the most successful manager of the Pozzo era, having guided them to an FA Cup final as well as their highest league finish since 1987. He's been out of work since a 12-game spell in charge of Leeds 2 years ago. In a statement, Watford said the club are confident that he will bring the qualities we believe are vital for this young squad: consistency in team selection, harmony with the dressing room, and a strong connection with our supporters, which seems to be a thinly veiled dig at Pezzolano, doesn't it? This is incidentally the Watford manager with the most games from the past 10 years, taking over from the manager with the fewest games. How about that, Justin? But what do we think to this?
It's lovely how football works. You would have heard me gasp a little bit then when you said 6 years since his last spell, because for some reason it felt like 3. Don't know why. Maybe it's just the Watford cycle that we're in, or the fact that time is a prison. I do like the appointment. I do, because I rate Javi Gracia on his strengths. I think I look at him and he's always come across as a well-structured coach, or a very structured coach. You go back to his years at Watford, typically favoured a 4-4-2, which I think could utilise some of the strengths in the squad. And Imran Lalza and Hector Cipriano double pivot, I think looks good on paper. It's balanced. It's got ball-playing ability and energy, and some defensive cover there. He's got good wide players at Watford. He's got the big man, little man potential partnership with Kieran Gard and Irankunda. On paper, it can work, but that's if that same style of playing system is going to be favoured there. But I think with that is he's been out of the game for a while, since he was sacked at Leeds a couple of years ago. Watford always find themselves in this position, don't they, where it's either a young aspiring coach who wants to make his mark in the Championship but has little experience in the Championship, like a Tom Cleverley, Pezzolano, or an older manager who's looking to bounce back after a poor spell, Javi Gracia, Slavan Bilic, etc. You can make either of one of those arguments with so many of their appointments. So it's one of them where I go, on paper, looks good. Go into it a little bit, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same. I honestly don't know how I feel about this. South Park once had a running joke where people were obsessed with eating these things called member berries, and what they was everyone used to have them because they would make you high on nostalgia. So people would eat them and they'd be lying there like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Those were good times. And that's sort of how it feels with this. Oh, do you remember the FA Cup run? Do you remember Gerard Deulofeu? Do you remember Etienne Capoue? I know we're not ones to really look down on nostalgia, considering that's how we spend half our time on this podcast, Justin, but that's just how it feels to me. Javi Gracia was very successful at Watford the first time around. That doesn't always mean it's going to be a success the second time around. I think he was working with a very talented side back then and a set of owners who were a lot more invested in the club than they are now. Maybe that will change now that they've got Gracia back. I don't know. I think in fairness to him, he did actually okay at Leeds in the circumstances. I don't know as much about his time at Valencia, but they did finish in their lowest league position in 33 years under him. So I don't know how this is going to go, to be honest. I can safely say Gracia is a better manager than Pezzolano. That should almost go without saying. But is he going to get this squad competing where Watford's owners think it should be? Not sure.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think sometimes personality is important. Like I said with Pezzolano, it was never going to work. Javi Gracia is experienced, and he's shown before that was a good Watford team, but it still wasn't stacked. It was competing well in amongst the Premier League at that point. And I think sometimes personality does come across in this sense, and that's where I think this appointment's really led to. Is he's got the right personality, and I think what he does with his teams is he puts an 11 out, he simplifies things, and they play their football. And I think that's what you can do with this current Watford 11 or this Watford squad. Is there's so many talented individuals that just make the system simple, effective, let them express themselves. And I think maybe that's what we could see. It's just whether or not Gracia's still got the same qualities as he once did in his previous very successful spell, which was at Watford 6 years ago.
Just a reminder that we've been nominated for the Best Football League podcast at the Football Content Awards, and time is running out for you to vote. You have until Sunday to do so, so we need your help. It takes just a few seconds of your time. All you have to do is click the link in the description of this episode. We're in the Best Podcast category under the Football League drop-down. If you do it, we will be very, very grateful. Thank you very much. May I also take this opportunity to point everyone in the direction of the latest video on the Second Tier YouTube channel. It's the top 10 Championship players most likely to play for England. And it's a well-trodden path, players going from the Championship to England. 16 of the current 24-man England squad have played in the Championship at some point in their careers. We all remember fondly Justin, the likes of Eberechi Eze competing at this level not too long ago. But what did you make of my list, Justin, without giving too much away?
16 of the current 24 are in there. Have you predicted any of them to be in when we've been doing shows? Is Leif Davis in it? Ryan Giles?
You love saying this, but again, I never predicted any of them to finish to be in the England squad. It's complete
Ben Sheaf in
toss. Again, never said that. Never predicted any of these guys to be in the England squad. What did you predict? Bloody, I don't know. I can't think of anyone. But the point is, I never predicted any of those guys to be in the England squad.
That's fine. That's fine. Whatever you say, Ryan. I think going to your video now, I was looking at it, and number 10 raised my eyebrows to the point where these old slugs nearly dropped off my head.
Why? You can reveal number 10. Go on.
It's Ronnie Edwards.
Yeah.
I like him as a ball player, but I don't think he's got any qualities I've seen so far that would make him a good top-flight defender, to be honest with you.
He did very well at QPR last season.
6-month spell, fine. Let's see it sustained. And again, I've not seen it. I just don't think he's got the physicality to do it. Okay. Number 5, I think, is a guarantee. I'd have had him higher.
Go on. You may as well.
No, because people need to watch this.
Fine, okay.
People need to watch this. Number 5 is a guarantee.
Producer Tom, beep it out.
Someone in the comments as well, this is someone you missed out. Someone in the comments said Josh Murphy, which I liked, but Ryan did not include him because he's ageist.
Okay, well, you've just predicted Josh Murphy to play for England based off everything that you were saying before.
I don't predict it. I like the suggestion, but it's a bit far-fetched,
I never predicted those other guys you mentioned before, but you've gone and said it now, so apparently that's the equivalent of doing so. But yeah, if you haven't watched the video yet, then please make sure you do. But let's talk about some more Championship action, Justin, because Norwich City, no imminent changes are expected there. That's according to BBC Radio Norfolk, who is reporting that Liam Manning will be in the dugout for Norwich's next game against, oh boy, his old side, Bristol City. Are you surprised at all by that, Justin?
Typical international break, making a story without a story. Let's go. Am I surprised by it? No, I'm not. I think it makes sense, to be honest. Liam Manning deserves time. I do rate him as a coach, and I know Bristol City fans have been very outspoken since he left, but ultimately he did guide you to the playoffs, your first playoff finish since 2008 in the Championship. So he deserves credit, despite his football maybe not being at the forefront of your preferences. What I am surprised about is Ben Napper not coming under much pressure. I've seen a lot of Liam Manning frustration. Not so much Ben Napper. For me, he spent a lot of money, and you can argue most of it has been, well, he's mostly been wrong about everything. His managerial changes, recruitment so far, none of it's rose to fruition. And what we've seen now is Boyaside has left, Gabriel Sara has left, Josh Sargent. Look, if this club doesn't perform between now and January, is he going to go in January? I wouldn't be surprised. He turned down and moved to the Bundesliga in the summer, worth bearing in mind. So I think a lot of what Ben Napper has done is been wrong, and he needs more. He's one that should be under pressure, not Liam Manning, for me.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not disagreeing based off everything that I was saying post East Anglian Derby on Sunday. I am surprised to a degree that Manning isn't going, because it did feel like the writing was on the wall for some form of a change at Norwich. As mentioned at the weekend, if anyone should go, it should be Ben Napper. But that's not how football tends to work. It's usually the manager who's sacrificed. So that's why I'm surprised there hasn't been a change of some sort, because it felt like something had to happen during this international break after, how toxic things got after the loss to Ipswich. Things have got off to such a bad start anyway that any hopes of a playoff challenge at the very least this season feels like a long way off. And now I think Norwich are risking one hell of a toxic atmosphere next weekend, because results at Carrow Road have been atrocious anyway this season. And if they lose to Liam Manning's old side, it could be a miserable one for all involved, I think.
Oh, definitely. They're in a position where they need to start getting results. I think what we've found in recent years is no club's too good, or no squad is too good to be struggling at the wrong end of the Championship. We saw Coventry last season struggling at the wrong end of the Championship, and it took a managerial change to spark them into life. That Coventry squad was miles ahead of where Norwich are at, by the way. Not comparing them by any means, but it just goes to show that results can be hard to come by, even with a very talented group of players. And whether or not Norwich have a talented group of players, whether or not recruitment will come good at some point, it needs to start getting results. And that's where the pressure does become quite high on Liam Manning, and probably does deserve a little bit more flack in that sense, is that he's not delivered any form of result or positive performance just yet. Home record is atrocious. You've lost to your rivals, and you could lose to your previous team that you left to get this job. It's not been a happy time for Manning, but that doesn't make him a bad coach. I think he's had a difficult set of circumstances to deal with. Style of play has been transitioned a little bit, and maybe we're seeing some of those issues come to the surface a little bit quicker than maybe they were going to last season. So, yeah, I still think Liam Manning deserves time. I will hammer that home till. I thought Pezzolano deserved a little bit more time, but ultimately, if he fell out with everybody, then it's going to be a struggle. But Liam Manning, that's not been the case for Liam Manning. He does deserve,
as far as we're aware,
he does deserve a little bit of leeway, I should say.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disagree. As I said at the weekend, I've seen proof that Liam Manning is a good manager. I haven't seen any proof that Ben Napper is a good sporting director. Well, there may be one manager who's keeping an eye on developments at Carrow Road. Former Norwich defender Russell Martin. That's because he's been sacked by Rangers after just 4 months in charge. He will almost certainly be the favourite for the Norwich job if it becomes available. But even if that doesn't happen, I imagine his next job will be in the Championship, won't it, Justin?
Is that the Michael Scott meme where he's just screaming no? Just overlay that on top of me right now. I've got so much to say about Russell Martin. How long have we got?
Yeah, well, you're not the biggest fan. If anyone wasn't listening during the Southampton promotion season, then you may not be too aware. But yeah, Justin's not a big Russell Martin fan, ladies and gents.
Yeah, Southampton got promoted, but I was fucking right all the way along, by the way.
About what?
Them not being as good as anything that was suggested. They were missing chances. They were conceding a ridiculous amount of goals. Oh, my God. Anyway, he probably will get linked with championship jobs. Doesn't mean he should be appointed in a championship. Bear in mind, I did say that about Frank Lampard, but things have turned around for him. I don't think this would be the case for Russell Martin, because Russell Martin, in his years as a manager so far, has shown zero flexibility. Zero flexibility. And I want Russell Martin to be a success because I do recognise that his style of play does take time, but there wasn't any real progress at Swansea over 2 years. At Southampton, his team were promoted, as I said, despite conceding over 70 goals. When does that happen? And obviously Rangers was a disaster. He needs media training, I'll say that, and he needs to become more flexible with his style of play. Because without the ball, his teams are an unmitigated disaster. So any club wanting to hire him needs assurances. They need to do the homework and need assurances from him that he's learned his lesson, and a plan B and a solid structure out of possession are in fact positives in modern football.
Okay, yeah.
I've not said anything nasty there either. I could have.
Yeah, I suppose, if you look at it one way. But yeah, to a certain extent, Russell Martin, I think, would have made more sense to appoint in the summer than Liam Manning at Norwich, not just because he's a fan favourite at the club, but style-wise, he's a lot more similar to what Johannes Hoftorp was doing last season, where there's a lot more of an emphasis on possession. However, it feels like Ben Napper has almost thrown any idea of philosophy out the window and just went with the most successful manager he could get. But yeah, I would expect Russell Martin to be back in the Championship soon. He was being heavily linked with Leicester in the summer, but that didn't happen for whatever reason. I think before, he perhaps thought he was too good for a job at a Championship team without parachute payments. Post Rangers, I would say he's definitely not getting any better than that now, but would still be an attractive appointment for plenty of clubs. It will definitely only work, though, if you're a side set up to play possession football. That really should go without saying. But I still think he would be a good appointment for a lot of Championship sides.
If you like conceding goals and a manager who's always pissed off, appoint him. Go for it. If you want to finish no further than mid-table without parachute payments, go for it.
What was it you were saying just a second ago about you haven't said anything?
Because what you said is now pissed me off.
There?
What you said has pissed me off. I don't think...
What bit?
The fact that he could look to get a job in a Championship. I don't think it's possible right now. I think he needs a year away to try and enhance his game a little bit, because what I've seen of him so far is it's just not any capability of budging from a style of play that hasn't at any point been successful. Sorry, it hasn't. Because guess what? They won promotion. No. Why did they win promotion, Ryan? Because he didn't play his style of play. He played defensively. That's why they got in the playoffs. That's why they got promoted.
Okay, fair enough. But one thing you haven't considered, Justin, is 5 in 10. Name 5 former Norwich managers.
Gary Holt, Nigel Worthington, Nigel Adams, Brian Gunn, and David Wagner. That was a start to give me a stomachache.
That was painful.
I went to the mid 2000s of managers you forgot about.
Yeah, we may need a name check on some of those, producer Tom, but I think that was fine. You really went the scenic route, didn't you? You could have gone with Daniel Farke, Johannes Hoftorp, David Wagner, but instead you went all the way back to the mid 2000s.
I went for all, apart from Nigel Worthington, I went for all the managers you want to forget about.
Eventful as always, 5 in 10. Let's go to the latest on Sheffield Wednesday, Justin, who were already on a record-breaking number of embargoes, but their record has now been extended because they've got another one. It's now 6 embargoes they're under, the latest for failing to pay the players on time. Meanwhile, the Sheffield Star is reporting that a growing number of non-football staff at the club have unionised over payment concerns. It says many of them only received £1,000 in their expected pay for September. A letter of formal collective grievance is expected to be lodged to the club, and it's said that while staff feel loyal, the mood is of enough is enough. And I think that's often something forgotten by many when we talk about Sheffield Wednesday, Justin. Yes, they've got the footballers, most of whom earn a lot of money, but there's hundreds of staff members at Wednesday who are just normal people earning a normal wage with bills to pay, and they're not guaranteed that wage each month as things stand.
I applaud every single one of them for sticking by the club, not because of anything that the club has done. Obviously, it's clear they love working for Sheffield Wednesday, but if you're not guaranteed a salary and you've got bills to pay, like you and I, you need to find a guaranteed source of income. So they're sticking by Sheffield Wednesday because they love the football club. I did read that some have unionised to obviously find some more protection for themselves, which is absolutely fine. But I think in the wake of this, if those people aren't getting paid, and this is something that, again, we need to remember, if those people aren't getting paid, everything at the football club stops working. Everything, I think, crumbles. It all crumbles. You cannot have 11 players on the pitch without the support staff cleaning, cooking, cutting the grass. Who's going to do that if they walk away? Come on, seriously. The club stops functioning as a football club without these individuals, and unfortunately, you've got one man taking advantage of that.
Yeah, it's a team effort, isn't it? It's like football. It's a team effort, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. And it's people's lives who are being messed with because of this saga. And it's just another reason why this needs to be resolved as soon as. But try telling that to the man responsible, because he ultimately signed up to pay these people their wages. He's not doing that now, and he could not seem to care less. So unfortunately, while we obviously support the staff there in doing what they can, as you were saying, Justin, how much of an impact it actually is going to have, unfortunately, probably very little. Meanwhile, John Textor has confirmed his interest in Sheffield Wednesday, but has admitted getting a deal done is really complicated. He said, it's not that I wouldn't love to come in tomorrow, but they're in a very difficult situation. There's a lot to figure out with the owner. There's a lot to figure out with the league itself. And there's not a lot of time to figure it out. It probably seems like half to 2/3 of that squad is under the age of 21. By the time we can even get in and address things, if we were to reach a deal with the club, certainly I hope it's not too late. Yeah, I think I speak for everyone when I say, whether it's Texter or somebody else, we all hope it's not too late when it comes to a takeover of Wednesday, because what too late looks like is pretty bleak.
Yeah, I'm going to read between the lines a little bit, and it feels like John Textor is maybe creating some distance to him and Sheffield Wednesday now. We know there was reports not too long ago about Transferry putting up the price and it ultimately making it very difficult for those to deal with him. But obviously Transferry is the one you need to point the finger at. It's clear the asking price in the negotiation of the club has become harder and harder to deal with. And that's seemingly what Texter is alluding to here, that the attractiveness of Sheffield Wednesday has dwindled so quickly with the embargoes, with the threadbare squad, with the kids being played. There's no attraction to it anymore. There isn't. And look, I think if everything was functioning as is and Chancery actually looked after the asset he's got at his hands, I'm sure you could have got close to the price you're asking for. But it seems clear that John Textor's just not going to pay it. It feels clear that no one else is going to pay it. And the club's crumbling. So what motivation is there now? So we talk about delays and whether it's too late for Sheffield Wednesday. I don't think that's the case. I do think there will be a takeover, but it's just what's going to be left of the club when that happens.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, thinking about what could be too late for Sheffield Wednesday is scary, because let's say if, for whatever reason, a takeover isn't done in a year's time, then we're looking at Sheffield Wednesday starting a League One season with a squad that's probably even weaker and more threadbare than it is now. And that's before you get onto all the possibilities like administration, points deductions, etc. And administration is in itself a messy situation, but one that's more and more likely the longer this goes on. The issue is, which Textor was kind of alluding to there, was even if you don't fork up the money that Chancery wants for the club, because it's been so underfunded for so long, there's tens of millions which needs to be spent on top of buying the club before you're even at a level where you can properly compete in the Championship. And unfortunately, what you need to spend is only going up and up the longer this goes on as well. So yeah, if we needed yet another reason why a takeover needs to happen as soon as, that's why. Well, a bit of news that will be of interest to Sheffield Wednesday fans is that the chair of the independent football regulator has been announced. David Cogan has held senior positions in the television and sports industries as an executive and has negotiated several multi-billion-pound TV rights deals. He's also advised UEFA, the Scottish Premier League and the NFL, and most recently sold the broadcast rights on behalf of the Women's Super League. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has called Kogan the outstanding candidate for the role. Yeah, good to see we're just about there when it comes to the regulator being up and running, because Lord knows Sheffield Wednesday need it, don't they?
He's the knight in shining armour, isn't he, weirdly? And it shouldn't be the case. It should be a man with lots of money in his pocket, but actually it's the man packed full of legislation, and he's a pen guy, isn't he? Pencil pusher, he's a bureaucrat.
The suits.
He's a suits. It's quite interesting. When you start a new job, Ryan, you want an easy few weeks, don't you? You want to get onboarded. You want to get all the HR stuff out of the way. You want to know where you can get a coffee. Ease your way
get the
in.
Training done and what have you.
Yeah, you need,
where's the nearest Greggs?
Yeah, where's the nearest Greggs? You've got to do the health and safety stuff, like how far away is your arms from the desk? You can't be arching your back and all that. He's not got time.
No.
His poor man's going to have such a bad spine because he's not going to have any of that training, because he's got to get straight into this. He's got to come in and put out a chip hand fire. I say chip hand fire because it seems the most aggressive and out of control one you can possibly get.
Dumpster fire is probably more applicable with Wednesday, isn't it?
Well, this one's out of control. I feel like he could control a dumpster fire. But yeah, he seems to have a good CV. It's hard to know, obviously, because actually how much legislative support can they actually bring in to this? So it's a literal acid test that we've got in front of us. We don't know what they can do. We're going to find out very, very quickly.
Yeah, well, the regulator will have the power, according to the government, to remove owners from power. So that's ultimately what we're hoping we'll see with Sheffield Wednesday, because it's the only way I see a takeover feasibly happening right now, because Chansiri is clearly not going to put that asking price down to a sensible level. I just worry about how he's going to react when the regulator inevitably intervenes. But the regulator is, of course, big news for all Championship clubs, because it should mean progress is made on the financial deal between the Premier League and the EFL, another thing which can't come soon enough. So there's a lot on the plate for the regulator as soon as they come through the door, even though the big Sheffield Wednesday chip hand fire, dumpster fire, is going to be the most pressing thing probably on their mind. And we'll finish proceedings here today, Justin, with Preston North End, because their owner, Craig Hemmings, is stepping down as chairman. Ian Penrose is set to replace him, but perhaps most significantly, this means there won't be someone from the Hemmings family as Preston chairman for the first time in 15 years. The BBC say the change is part of a wider strategy to find new investment and a potential new owner or ownership group for the club to allow them to continue to compete in the Championship. So big news for PNE, Justin.
Yeah, it's big news. I think it's positive. I think obviously the Hemmings family has done a lot with Preston for a long time, and they have stabilised him. But one thing we've pointed out that has been lacking in recent years is, I won't say serious investment in the club, but certainly we're not looking at a club spending millions of pounds. But I think new investors bring new ideas, and I think Preston have been in this scenario where they've been doing the same thing over and over again, where they're signing players. You don't get a lot of value out of them, and then they eventually leave on a free transfer. That's what we've seen. So, as I say, I think new investors bring new ideas. They bring an influx of financial income, etc. There are positives there. So, yeah, it's a good thing. And I know we know this has been on the cards for quite a while. If you go back some years, Chris Kirchner, that guy, he
less about him the better.
But they were entertaining discussions with him. So we know this has been there or thereabouts, but this is obviously the next step for the football club.
Yeah, at the risk of getting into some legal trouble, if you don't know who Chris Kirchner is, just Google him.
Yeah.
It's a lot safer than me explaining who he is. But yeah, it's glaringly obvious that Preston are a club which needs investment. They're one of the lowest spenders in the Championship. They've only spent around 10 million on transfer fees in the last 5 seasons. And when you're that limited with your spending, you're always going to find yourself hitting a ceiling at some point. Now, the Hemmings family have obviously done a lot of good for Preston. And while a lot of Preston fans will point out they're worth an awful lot of money and possibly could have spent more over the years, it's more about not spending beyond your means and making the club self-sustainable, isn't it? Which is admirable, but ultimately football is about winning things. So it's right for the Hemmings family to be looking for new investment, new owners, etc., because ultimately they've been quite high up the queue for a while now when it comes to getting to the Premier League, haven't they? And other teams have jumped ahead of them, and instead, in this strange queue, they're somehow going backwards. So it's not really a queue at all.
It's the type of character like, no, you go, don't worry. That sort of thing, isn't it?
They're too nice. They're constantly letting people cut in line, saying, oh, yeah, you can come in. And then you've got the VIPs walking past the line who are just walking in. You're like, oh, what about us? It must be pretty frustrating.
It's a good point. It is a good point. And actually quite a good analogy that things, I wouldn't say have been too nice for Preston over the years, but they've put themselves at the back of the queue. And that's not a criticism. Like I said, it's about competing within your means. And they have done that.
I remember, Justin, back when it was the Alex Neil years and you had your Ben Pearsons, your Ben Davises, Daniel Johnson and what have you. I remember a bookie offering odds on who the 50th club were to be in the Premier League. And I think Preston were favourites at the time, which just goes to show how high they have been up that queue. But for some reason, they're just going backwards. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they flirted with it for a long time. You go back to the early Championship years. Billy Davis was in charge, got them to the playoffs 2 years in a row. Was it Paul Simpson who got them into the playoffs a couple of years later? I can't remember if it's Paul Simpson or Alan Irvine, but they've always been there or thereabouts. Obviously got relegated. Took them a while. Simon Grayson came in, did a great deal of good. Alex Neil came and took them to a level that they were ready to make that next step, but they just never took it. And it's probably from that point where that's where they've gone, actually, no, it's fine. You go. Don't worry. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I need stimulators anyway. Don't worry. It's that sort of thing. And unfortunately, that's pushed them way down the queue.
Yeah, poor Preston, stuck in that queue. They must be absolutely bloody freezing at this stage. But there we go, ladies and gents. This has been the Second Tier Midweek Show. We've been talking about all the news from across the Championship over the past few days. Despite it being an international break, as always, there's still loads going on from across the Championship. But we'll be back again on Sunday. No preview show because there's no games this weekend. So we'll be back again on Sunday. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Brian Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.